A few weeks ago, I told you that as long as you're emotionally unhealthy, you can't have a healthy relationship with God. If you're not a God-fearing person, if you're an atheist, if you're agnostic, don't go nowhere. Because you could get a lot from this discussion, and I'll tell you why. Because this don't just apply to God. This is not just something that's true for God. But what happens is that because people know that God, any concept of God, is that he's all-powerful, some get tripped up by this. You see, it's easy for them to say, all right, if I'm emotionally unhealthy, I can't have a healthy relationship with my spouse. That makes sense to me. If I'm emotionally unhealthy, I can't have a healthy relationship with my kids. That also makes sense to me. But God is all-powerful. So what is impossible for him? Well, there's nothing impossible for God, but here's the thing. Here's the situation that an unhealthy person finds themselves in. At the root of emotional disorder is a distorted belief in the way that human value works. You see, we look at a car and we say that car, it gets value, its value rises, its value diminishes. We look over at an electronic device. We say, look at how the value of this electronic device works. It's very expensive when it first comes out and it's brand new. After that, it diminishes. We look out at movie stars and the messages coming from movies and TV and pop songs, and we say, oh, if a person is successful, they get a lot of money, and so they're worth a lot. But if they lose the esteem of the people around them, then they don't get as much money, so they're not worth as much. And so the whole thing is built on a misperception about how human worth works. The way that a car's value is determined and fluctuates and operates and is created is not the same. The nature of that type of value is not the same type of nature of the value of human beings. When we say that the value of a thing is inherent to the thing, that means that the thing itself provides the value. You see, in all the other cases we talked about, with cars, with electronic devices, with movie stars and celebrities, bear in mind we're talking about celebrities. We're not talking about them as human beings. We're talking about them as a product, a movie star, a brand, right? But that is distinct from them as human beings. And at the root of emotional disorder is this failure to understand that there is a difference between that type of worth, commercial worth, and human worth. Human worth is not, it doesn't fall into the same category. Commercial worth goes up and down, fluctuates, it can disappear entirely. But in the world of commercial worth or value, the worth itself is not generated from the thing itself. It's generated from how many people admire the thing, you see? Which is completely different from how human worth works. When we're talking about human worth, the fact that you're a human is what produces the worth. And it don't matter if anybody wants you, loves you, cares about you, admires you or not. The worth does not go away or fluctuate or anything because it's not based on that. Human worth and commercial worth are distinct, two entirely different things. The nature of your worth as a person does not in any way resemble or fall into the same category as commercial worth. And so at the root of emotional disorder is a failure to understand that distinction. And why do people fail to understand that distinction? Because their parents didn't understand the distinction. And so when they raised you with only one understanding of one type of worth. And so when you look at yourself and you go, what is my worth? How does my worth work? Where does it come from? What do you apply to yourself? The only type of worth that you know about. The kind that applies to cars and baseball trading cards and electronic devices and celebrities. Now, the celebrities is a little tricky because you say, well, they're people. Yes, their worth as a celebrity is their worth as a commercial object. Their worth as people, as individuals, just like you and me, do not fluctuate. When we're unsure about the nature of our value, in other words, when we don't understand that that we provide it, what we are provides it. It can't come from anything else. If I change this shirt, my worth doesn't go up or down because I myself, me, Brian Barnett, am providing the worth. The worth is inherent to who and what I am. So no matter how I look, no matter what I'm wearing, no matter how successful or not successful I am the source of worth. Are you starting to see the distinction between commercial worth and human worth? They are not in anywhere or in any way in the same category. But when we're unsure about this, when we don't understand that distinction, and we only know the one, the commercial worth, and we apply that to ourselves, what that naturally means is that on our own, just like this electronic device, if nobody wants it, it's worthless. We say that applies to us too, because I'm applying the type of worth that applies to things like cars and electronic devices and artwork, right? My daughter, my 6-year-old daughter, can draw a picture for you right now, and you can have it for $6 billion. That's all I'm willing to sell it for. Is it worth $6 billion? Who determines whether a painting is worth $6 billion? I'll tell you who determines. How many people want it? And that's it. If nobody wants my 6-year-old daughter drawing, except for me, even though for me it might be worth $6 billion, if there's not a bunch of people out there willing to throw down money for it, then commercially it's not worth $6 billion. Now, when we are unsure about the nature of our value, the nature of our value, I'm not talking about what our value is, I'm talking about the nature of it, how it works. What creates the value? Where does the value come from? When we don't understand the nature, the true nature of our worth as people, it means that the only thing we've got to go on is what we see in the world around us, the commercial type of value. When you apply the same type of value that we applied to cars to yourself, what it means is that just on your own, you are worthless. Why would you say that you are worthless? Because that type of worth has to come from external things. It has to come from outside of you. The car does not generate the worth. A car does not generate value. That's not the way commercial value works. What generates the value for a car is how many people admire it. If nobody admires that car, it doesn't matter if it's brand new. If nobody's willing to pay $5 for that car, it's not worth $5. It doesn't matter if it's brand new. The car is not generating anything. It doesn't matter how new it is. The thing that is generating the value for anything commercial is how many people admire and crave that thing. And unhealthy people say, well, I know of no other type of value. That must be true for me too. They arrive at that conclusion as children because that's the message they're getting from their parents. And their parents aren't coming right out and saying it. No, not most parents. Some parents do say things like that. The messaging is very subtle. The parents also, as I mentioned earlier, do not understand that there is a distinction between types of value. The nature of how value works. The parents themselves don't understand that there is a difference between the nature of how value works for a comic book and how it works for people. So the children grow up, and what understanding of value systems do they adopt for people? The only one they have access to, the only one that their emotional teachers understand. That is the root cause of emotional disorders. So in that type of value system, if you strip away people's admiration and you're just left with the thing itself, the comic book, but nobody wants it, then it's worthless. Well, you're just like that comic book. You're just like that comic book. You have no value on your own. And that is not the way that human value works. But when we are unsure about the nature of our value, because we've grown up not being able to distinguish ourselves from cars and electronic devices and comic books and baseball trading cards, it means that whatever love or extension of friendship that gets extended to us, we will block it. We will obstruct it ourselves. Why do we do that? We ourselves will prevent our own selves from being able to take it in, absorb that love and friendship, because why? We aren't worth it. That is the most destructive part of not having an accurate understanding about inherent worth. When you grow up thinking that your value operates, the nature of human value works the same way as a car, on some level you understand that just on your own you are worthless. You are devoid of worth. How do we get from there to here, where, okay, so my worth has to come from people's admiration stuff? How do we get from that to I'm devoid of worth? Because you are not providing the worth. Your existence is not creating it. Not as long as you believe that the nature of your worth operates the same way as a Nintendo. How does a Nintendo's worth work? Does the Nintendo just create the worth on its own? Not if people don't want it. Not if people don't admire it. Not if they're not talking about it. So, on some level, people understand. Even if they don't consciously understand it, they subconsciously or unconsciously understand that if the nature of my worth falls into the same category as that of a car or of a Nintendo or of a comic book or of a baseball trading card, then just on my own, I'm worth less. I'm devoid of worth. My worth has to come from out there and be given to me. And that's not how human worth works. So when we find ourselves in that belief system, what we do is we know, quote unquote, that we're worthless, just us ourselves. And so when people try to extend love to us in friendship, we slap it away. You see, we block the love and the friendship from fully reaching us because we don't believe we're worth it. If we can't take it in, it can't do us any good. It can't have the full positive effect on us that it's supposed to have. The love never gets through. Any type of love cannot reach you. The belief system itself does not allow for it. When you understand and fully grasp human value is inherent, then you understand that a person can walk around fully confident and at ease with himself or herself always, no matter what clothes they're wearing, no matter what trajectory their career takes, no matter how many people admire them or don't. Understanding that your worth is inherent changes everything. Think about these two words, loved and lovable. Which one is describing an inherent state? Loved or lovable? It's lovable. Lovable describes an inherent state. What it literally means is I am capable of being loved. Love just means people love you or they don't. You really need to begin thinking in terms of inherent. This describes the inherent nature of a thing, or does it describe a superficial temporary state? What do we know about temporary states? They fluctuate, don't they? Does human worth fluctuate? No, because it doesn't fall into that category of superficial temporary states. When we're talking about your worth as a person, we're talking about an inherent, permanent quality. Now, a person who doesn't understand these things views herself as unlovable. Unlovable describes an inherent quality. When you view yourself as unlovable, this is not just for now. Like if you do a few things, then that can change. We're talking about an inherent quality, what you are. When we talk about loved, we're talking about a superficial, temporary state. Right now I'm not loved, but I could be loved if I style my hair different, if I put on a different shirt. Think about God, think about anybody. Extending love to a person who only understands the commercial nature of value. And people say, well, what that person needs is more love. Let's give him more love. And they start throwing love at that person. Do you see that if the person views himself or herself as unlovable, that is, not worthy of love, this is not the same as unloved? What would happen if you threw a bunch of love at somebody who only felt unloved? What would happen? Oh, I feel loved. The problem would be solved. But what happens when you throw a bunch of love at a person who feels unlovable? Does the problem get solved? No. And not even God can penetrate this. Not even God will penetrate this. Let's put it that way. He can't because of free will. So, let's say that God extends love to this person all year long. If she's slapping the love away because she doesn't view herself as lovable, what good can God's love do? What good can anybody's love do? You see, if you're extending love to me and I myself keep slapping it away, how is this any different than the person who isn't getting any love? There is no difference. Because if I'm not allowing it to get to me, I say, I don't deserve that. Nope, that's not for me. Nope, boom, boom, boom. And I'm slapping that love away. All the love being extended to me, I'm slapping it away myself. I myself am doing that. Is that any different than a person who is not loved at all? No, it's not any different, because in both cases, neither person is receiving the love. So they can't absorb it. It can't do them any good. The person, himself or herself, is the one putting himself or herself into that predicament. Think about a starving person. They're starving to death. You take pity on them. So you offer them an apple. Can you imagine the scene? The person there, weak, starving, ribs showing, skinny as can be, sitting there in their starvation state. And you approach the person with an apple, and you extend the apple to them, and you say, please take this apple. I want you to have it. And what does the starving person do? She slaps it out of your hand. You say, this person's going to die if she doesn't eat. So, what is the solution to this situation? I know what the solution is. I'm going to go and I'm going to get 2 apples. 2 apples will do it. You come back with 2 apples. You extend the 2 apples to this starving person, and what happens? she slaps them away. You see, she doesn't view herself as deserving of the apples. So she won't take them in. She won't consume them. Our society is so pointlessly devoid of insight on this issue when it comes to love and people who are hurting. You know what society says the solution is? Get more apples. Get more apples. That'll fix it. Yeah. Go get more apples. That's exactly what is missing here. She's not getting enough apples. That's the problem. We're not offering this person, you see. We're not offering enough apples. So they go and get more apples and offer it to the starving person, and that person just keeps slapping them away. Do you see that in this situation, not even truckloads of apples would make any difference? It doesn't matter how many apples you offer this woman if she just keeps slapping them away. If the woman doesn't perceive herself as deserving of receiving and eating these apples, and she refuses to allow herself the apples, the nutrition can't get inside of her, and it can't do any good. Love is no different. People who are truly hurting are not hurting because of a lack of access to love. The fundamental problem is that they themselves do not perceive themselves as lovable. It's not that there's not any love out there for them, or that nobody's offering them love. It wouldn't matter if the whole world surrounded them and said, we love you, here, let's do all these loving things for you. The fundamental problem is that they themselves do not perceive themselves as lovable. Is lovable a word that describes a temporary, superficial state? No. Lovable describes an inherent quality. The person who views himself or herself as unlovable, what that means is that they view themselves as undeserving of love completely. As long as this is true, they will continue to slap away any love that is extended to them. And as long as they are slapping it away, they can't receive it. They can't take it in. It can't nourish them. So before a person can benefit from love and from a relationship with anybody, including God, the Most High, the person herself or himself must first view herself or himself as lovable. That means worthy of being loved. What is a natural result of viewing yourself as worthy of being loved? You begin to love yourself. The person who begins to love herself then can begin to accept love from others. Until she loves herself and until she views herself as lovable, it doesn't matter how much God loves you or how many invitations He extends to you to have a healthy relationship with Him. You first have to be receptive to it.